Hey guys, how are we going today? Today I'm going to show you the best watch build I think I've done yet, and it's made from AliExpress components. Did you know that you can find almost anything on AliExpress? Like this awesome watch case, this bezel, brand new strap, a custom dial, the one that suits you, the way that you want to do it, a Japanese made movement for the watch. How good is that? Found on AliExpress. This thing for looking at your watch in detail, a movement holder, watch pad, a case opening ball, just like this one here. You screw the back open with it, an O-ring greasing tool, some hand presses just like these, use them to push the hands on, some tweezers for picking up the fine hands and things like that. Whoa, they're going everywhere. What else is there? There's spare crowns, there's spare hands, you name it, you can find it on AliExpress. Now after this video, check out my links. There's some discount codes in the description, so take a look down there and use them to buy all the things in your cart and get a great discount. I really thank you for watching today. But let's get to why you're all here, to build this amazing watch from AliExpress parts. Here's a sneak peek. It all starts here. So these are the parts that you are going to need to buy yourself. Some hands, a dial, a case, a movement, and a strap. Along with some basic tools, that's all you're going to need to get started. This is the movement that I got. It's a NH36 movement. It has the day and date function on that wheel there that spins around. The crown is at 3.8 position, so it's round a little bit, which gives it more clearance on the watch, but that matches the case. So when I search for these parts, I always type into the search bar the movement and make sure all my parts are compatible. Here is the dial that I chose. It's black because I wanted a nice blackout watch. I thought it would have a good contrast and look really cool. The case is a sturdy case. It's all black. It has a rotating bezel which you can change. This one is blue and it has 0 to 60 on there, so you can set timers using that bezel. I believe it has a sapphire crystal which makes it really strong and scratch resistant, which is awesome. And also a see-through back, so you can see what's going on with your amazing mechanical movement, which winds itself. You don't need a battery. How good is that? I also chose these hands. They're fairly simple and sleek silver hands, but with this cool lightning style blue seconds hand that I think will really stand out. Finally, the strap, which is 22 millimeters wide to fit the case. It looks really good. I think it'll match in nicely. Let's see how this is all going to come together. See, from a few small components, you can pick and choose and make your own custom watch. Now let's get started. The first thing to do is put the dial on the movement itself. Now the dial comes with a couple of tabs usually, so you have to take care in lining it up so that you cut off essentially the right pin and leave the right pins to line it up with the dial. I overlaid the case just to make sure that the date was lined up and the crown was lined up in the right position. Check the pins, and I've removed the pins just like so. And then push the dial down onto the movement in the two holes that are provided on the movement itself. Now, I just gently got a wee bit of dust on there, so I'm just wiping that off. You want to take care with handling components for your watch because any dust or loose particles or grease marks will show up and annoy you for the rest of your watch's life. The next thing you want to do is pull the crown all the way out so you're into the time adjustment mode and gently wind it round until the date just clicks over, as it has to 15 there. Then you know it should be right at midnight, and you can set your hands at midnight or the top of the watch and everything will be lined up perfectly. I'm starting with the hour hand, lining it up to midnight. Once it's there, I'll get my hand presser tool and I can gently push down on that, applying even pressure so that it sits down nice and parallel. You can sort of make sure by looking sideways at it that it's sitting parallel and pressed on enough that it's going to have good clearance when it spins around the watch. Now that I've made sure that it's aligned, I can go and get the minute hand, pick it up, gently align it with the hour hand. And as I get my hand presser tool, I can apply a tiny bit of pressure and rotate it slightly with the help of some tweezers to line it up perfectly with midnight. Once it's there, I can gently push down like I did with the hour hand and make sure it's in position. Look at it sideways to check that it's parallel. I can see it just needs a wee bit more adjustment, so I'll try again, just gently pushing down to line it up. Oh, they're a little bit too much. Move it back. And there we go. Now that I'm happy with it, I think it's all lined up, I'm just going to wind it round and make sure it's got clearance all the way around. It doesn't bind up or hit. And if it makes it all the way around, then I'm ready to go to the next step, which will be putting on the second hand. And now we're ready for the trickiest part of any beginner's watch building journey. It's putting on the second hand. You're bound to mess this up, so make sure you buy a couple of spares on your first attempts or even second attempts. But this is how you get it on. I have a little bit of blue tack on the end of the watch presser, very small bit because I don't want to make it look bad or damage it, but it's just enough to hold it, and then I can line it up by looking in at an angle. I find that's the best way to see what's going on while trying to line it up. Once it's lined up with the stem, you can gently press down and it should pop into place. Don't put too much pressure, otherwise you'll just end up bending or damaging the hands. And just remember that patience is key in this sort of thing, but you will get there. And you'll find that this is an incredibly rewarding thing to do. Once you know that you've done it yourself, you find it actually works and it looks great too. Now, if you've got this far, please like and subscribe my video. I really appreciate it. If you've got value from this, then I hope it's inspired you to give something like this a go yourself. I'm going to test this thing and see if it works. I push the crown in, give a bit of a wind, and just a quick tap to get the mechanism started, and away it goes. Look at it ticking around there. How good. I think this is looking pretty amazing. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Now, we're 50% there with the watch build. That's one of the trickiest bits to do. The last tricky bit is the crown setup. But to do that, we need to get it into the case. And to get it into the case, what do we need to do? We need to remove this temporary crown that came with the movement itself. So what we can do is we can move the rotor out of the way. And when the crown is pushed all the way in, there's a little tab that pops up for you to push down on, and it releases the crown. It is the crown release button. You'll need to grab some tweezers or something really fine to be able to depress the button. Make sure it's pushed in just like that. And just here, where I'm pointing with one of the tweezer ends, there is the button that you need to press down on. Push that down, and at the same time, just gently push out on the crown, and it will pop out just like that. Simple when you know how. To get it into the case, I sit it on the watch pad, just like that. Unscrew the back. Set that aside for later. Undo the crown, which is actually really tricky with the gloves on. Set the movement that way up on the pad. Gently overlay the case, lining up the crown position with roughly where it is on the watch. Flip it over and it's in place without doing any damage. Now I just get my tweezers and I'll gently just push down on the plastic outer edgings of the movement to make sure that it's sitting down correctly. And you can also use it just to try and align up the hole where the crown is with the crown position hole. Just like that. Now the movement itself came with its own spare crown, ready to be cut down, so that's what I've got here. I know it's the right one for the movement because it came with the movement itself. I suggest if it's your first time or first couple of times, then grab yourself a set of 5 of these or maybe even more, because it can be quite tricky to cut these down. So it's always great having a spare. If you cut it too short, then you can always try again the next time. Now I'm pushing it in as it is, just to see how far it goes into the watch to engage. Once it's done that, I can take some measurements to try and work out how much to cut off the stem itself, because they always come longer. So getting this position right is quite tricky. You need to be able to have it so that when you wind the crown all the way in, it seals, but you see here it depresses. So you can measure how much it depresses so that you know how much it's going to push in when you are winding it into the thread on the housing itself. You need to know how thick it is and how much gap there is between the housing. And now that I've taken a few measurements, it really can be a bit of trial and error to get this right. Now, from my measurements, I've worked out that I'm going to need to cut off approximately 6.5 millimeters of the end of the stem, and that will allow the crown to operate correctly, as well as enough to push it in to wind it all the way home into the watch housing. So I'm going to try that. If you're unsure, you could always cut a little bit less and then keep trimming it until it's right. But what I've found is when you screw the crown onto the stem, it can bind up. So getting it on and off a lot of times is something that you probably don't want to have to do. You do really want to get it cut down to the right length the first time and go from there. At 6.5 millimeters, I'm marking it with a pen so that I know where to trim. So I've grabbed myself a permanent marker and I'm going to mark this position on the stem, and then I'm going to find some side cutter pliers to cut the stem down to the right size. I gave the end of the stem a light sand, and now it's ready for the crown to be wound on. So I grab another flat jawed pliers to hold gently on the stem itself. I can hold it nice and tight while I wind this on. There we go. If you want it to stay on and you're confident of the length, then you can put a bit of Loctite on there to ensure it never comes out ever again. Now the stem's ready, we can go back to the watch and push it in for the first time and just check that everything's going to work okay. Make sure it's lined up, push it all the way in and see if it engages. Now winding it all the way into the housing can be a bit tricky, especially with these gloves on. There we go, it's all the way home. The length was right to get it all the way in. Now I think we're good to go. The next thing to do after this is just have a look, admire the work, and get ready to put the rear case back on. It has a little O-ring in there which you can lubricate so that it runs on smoothly. Grab the case back, flip it over, and screw it onto the watch. I always gently do it by hand first, just to make sure that it's going onto the threads okay. You don't want to cross thread anything. Once it's going on, then you can use your case opening tool or the ball like I have here. This is used to screw it into place, and you can push down while it's on the watch pad to apply a bit of pressure and wind it in. Make sure it's nice and tight and waterproof. Now look at that watch. The watch itself is pretty much done. The only thing to do now is stick on our custom bezel. So I've got the blue color bezel. The case comes with this double-sided tape and the bezel is separate. So just pull off the tape layer like that and grab your bezel. It doesn't really matter where it lines up, I don't think, because you can wind it round to the correct position later anyway. So I put it on, apply a bit of downward pressure to get it stuck into place correctly, wind it round just like that, check it lines up with the increments correctly, and it all looks good to me, so I'm happy with that. And we can now take a look at the finished watch in its entirety, but without a strap or a bracelet. But I'm going to wind the crown out and just check that it all winds on, everything's working properly. So I can adjust the time. Yep, that's working okay. If I push the crown into the date adjust portion, the date's changing okay. You wind it down to change the date. You wind it up to change the day, just like that. Now this has Japanese and English for the day, which is really cool. I love that feature about this watch. This thing is so awesome. I'm really pleased with the color choices. The black and blue or blackout case with a bit of blue features in there, I think is awesome. Has anyone else got any other colour ideas that they'd like to try? Again, let me know in the comments if you do. I'd love to hear it. I also love that the back is see-through and you can see the balance wheel there rotating backwards and forth as it's regulating the time. These things are very accurate and they have a good power reserve as well. If you're wearing it every day, then it just winds itself and you don't have to worry about it. But if you leave it overnight or a day, it'll still be running when you want to pick it back up again. But if you sit it down and it stops working, then it doesn't really matter. It's actually pretty easy to set the time. You just wind the crown out, set the time, and away you go again. But with a watch this awesome, you're never going to want to take it off, so it's always going to be wound and ready to go. I did, however, come into one problem with this watch. The bracelet strap that I bought came and it doesn't quite fit into the case properly. I don't know if this is normal or not, but the end pieces are squashed together and they don't sit in enough to get the pins. See here, I'm battling to get the pins. They don't line up with the hole. But I was way too excited to get this watch going, so I had to improvise. So I ended up bending the tabs on the strap itself to make it fit, and so I could try it out. I didn't have time to wait for another strap to arrive. But as you see, I'll show you in a minute. That's how it comes, like that. They're a bit narrow and it doesn't sit quite right. So the bottom piece, the bottom tab, I had to bend with my pliers downwards so it sat better on the watch. And it also moved the pin attachment point closer to the holes in the housing itself, which allowed me to use the pins that were supplied with the strap. Maybe someone can tell me how you're supposed to get these bracelets adjusted correctly without having to use pliers like I have. But like I said, I was just so keen to get this going that I'm doing it like this. And it seemed to work. And the parts are so cheap that I can always get myself another bracelet strap later. As you can see here, the end piece now has the tab bent down. It doesn't look that flash, but it's on the underside of the watch. I can put my pin in and use my pin tool to align them and press them into position and get this strap in place. I've done the other side and it seems sturdy. When I pulled on it and wiggled it, it didn't pop out, so that'll work for now. On the outside of the bracelet and the watch, you wouldn't be able to tell, and it looks perfect. And for the grand reveal, let's check out this watch. It's the blue blackout automatic watch. How cool is this thing? Go on, buy some parts and give it a crack yourself. Good luck with the build and let me know how you get on. I would absolutely love it to hear from you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.